Hey, this is Jamie with Stonemeyer Games, and welcome to this week's live cast. It is March 11th, 2020, and yeah, let's jump right into it. I have a bunch of just mostly random topics to talk about today. Some Stonemeyer Games news, some small stuff, and so if you have any questions, feel free to answer, or feel free to ask them, and I'm happy to answer them either here on Facebook or if you're watching this later on YouTube, I'll answer in the comments there. Let's start out with chocolate of the day. And I actually have a question for you regarding this chocolate of the day. So, Megan and I found this chocolate in one of our pantry drawers the other day. We bought it a while ago. It's delicious. It's kind of like a crunchy Samoa, the Girl Scout cookie Samoa. Really, really good. If you're listening to this, I'm holding up a bag that says Dark Chocolate Coconut Clusters by Alter Eco. And we can't remember where we bought this. And they're really good, so we want to be able to buy them again. So if you happen to know like where these are bought, I'm guessing either Amazon or Whole Foods, probably Whole Foods, but I can't figure it out from the packaging. So if you recognize these and you know where to get them, let me know because they are very delicious. That's my chocolate of the day. What is your chocolate of the day or your treat of the day if you're not a chocolate fan? Josh just chimed in to say, I hope the monitor mount is working great. And that's one of the little things I wanted to share today. I've had this wobbly, shaky monitor problem for a long, long time. I work at a desktop computer on a sit-stand desk. The sit-stand desk itself is excellent. It's by a company called Uplift. And I have two monitors. If you don't have two monitors, I highly recommend it. It's amazing. It changes everything if you have two monitors. But my monitors were on these they're nice monitors, but they were on these cheap plastic stands, which I don't understand why monitor companies make these really nice high quality monitors and then make the stands really cheap and wobbly. And for years, whenever I type, the monitor just like wobbles, these little micro wobbles. And it was driving me crazy. And so I looked for suggestions online from people like Josh who had some ideas. And one of the ideas was a dual monitor stand that clamps into the desk. And so that's what you can't tell because you're seeing me instead of the monitor, and my camera's mounted on one of the monitors. But it's made a huge difference. I've only had them installed for a couple days now, but to have the monitors like on these adjustable stands instead of on these wobbly plastic stands has made a huge difference. It's really nice to be able to like adjust the monitors whenever I need to, and it's cleared so much desk space. It's incredible how much space those monitor stands take up. So it's been awesome. I highly recommend it if you have multiple monitors or even just one monitor and you've experienced that wobbly monitor problem that I mentioned. What else is going on? I've played a lot of games in the last week. A lot of games that I've actually really, really enjoyed. I played Flotilla again a couple days ago and played Azul Summer Pavilion. I bought it after playing it at Geekway Mini, and I love it. It's definitely my favorite Azul, even though I really enjoy the original Azul, and I thought the stained glass one was okay, just not my favorite. And I also played Life Siphon for the first time, which I thought was really interesting. It was kind of like a multiplayer Magic the Gathering style dueling game, but there are some other elements to it. And your life is everything. You spend your life as resources, but you also, if you have zero life, you lose the game to the player on your right. So I like that idea of life as a resource and as your win or lose condition, essentially. We also started a new Charterstone campaign. So Charterstone is back in stock. The reprint is back in stock. So we thought it was a good time for me to introduce it to five friends, including four other friends, total of five people, including Megan. So we're playing through the Charterstone campaign for my first time in a couple years. I played it right when it came out, played the published version, 6-player. Now I'm playing a 5-player Charterstone campaign. So if you haven't played Charterstone, now is a great time to get into it. I think the Charterstone group is very active in terms of answering questions and talking about different strategies and approaches and ways that you've unlocked things that are differently than other people. Already I'm seeing a huge difference in this campaign compared to my original campaign. I'll look over here for questions in a second, then I'll come back to, I think I have one or two other games that I've been playing. Ricardo says that he is quarantined in Italy. And yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Ricardo. And I have a feeling we're going to see, well, we've already seen some of that worldwide. I think we're going to see more of that as we try to prevent the spread of the coronavirus so that it doesn't it's going to get worse, but hopefully it doesn't get exponentially worse by people quarantining, self-quarantining, being very careful about hygiene and whatnot. I actually wrote, that was one of the articles that I wrote very recently on Monday. I wrote an article about the economic impact particularly on the game industry and crowdfunders and entrepreneurs of the coronavirus, the potential impact. It's all hypothetical. It's just kind of things that I've seen so far and where I think it's going to lead. With one of the big things that we've started seeing in the game industry is the impact on conventions, where I think convention attendance will be impacted, and some conventions are just canceling or rescheduling or delaying the timing of the convention to kind of wait out the coronavirus so that they aren't being a part of the problem, basically, which I greatly admire. I think that's really tough to do for a convention and for the people whose livelihoods are based on that convention. Hopefully they can make it until the next convention season or the next the rescheduled version of that convention. But the article delves way deeper into it than just conventions, because I think it's going to impact a few areas quite a bit, and will impact the economy as a whole, particularly in terms of any industry, any service or entertainment industry where people gather together. I think they'll be greatly impacted, especially the people who make those events and those industries work, the people who work day to day to make them operational. Mo says any advance on Oceania. I think he's asking for information on Oceania, and he's referring to the Wingspan Oceania expansion, which we have announced, but we haven't revealed any other details about it, and won't for quite some time. The only reason that a word about that expansion is out there in terms of the location is because we had a charitable effort to support wildfire relief efforts in Australia. Brian says, what are the plans for getting neoprene mats for Wingspan that aren't too small? Yeah, the current versions that we have out there are just a little bit too small. They're functional, but they're a little bit too small, and that's why they're discounted on our web store. And the upgraded version, or the correctly sized version, really, not upgraded, but correctly sized versions are on the way. They should be available in either mid-April or early May. So if you're interested in them, just stay tuned to our e-newsletter, and you'll know then. And the Wingspan Facebook group, I'll probably reveal them there as well. Corlin says, when should we expect the announcement for your next release? Yeah, I think I can say this now. So the My Little Scythe expansion, which experienced a slight delay due to a mistake that I made, I will be announcing it on April 1st. It's not an April Fool's joke. It is a real announcement when I will start talking about the My Little Scythe expansion officially on April 1st, our April 1st e-newsletter. Phoebe says, thanks to Daylight Savings, we can now watch your live stream at 2 a.m. instead of 3 a.m. Yeah, Daylight Savings is well, I'm glad it's helping you, Phoebe. It's messing up my sleep schedule so far. I keep sleeping later than I normally would. But Phoebe, congratulations on how your campaign is going. The Ludo Cherry board game stylish clothing campaign is going really, really well. I highly recommend checking it out if you're looking for some board game themed clothing where that's actually very stylish. That's not a kind of it winks at people who know what the icons on the clothing mean, but beyond that, you wouldn't necessarily know that it's board game clothing. I also want to give a quick shout out to Charlie Cleveland, who is the designer, one of the main designers of Subnautica. He has his first board game on Kickstarter right now, a board game he designed with Bruno Faiduti called Vampire Vendetta. And let me confirm that name here. I just backed it. Nope. Vampire the Masquerade. Vampire the Masquerade Vendetta. So he has that game on Kickstarter right now. I've had some nice chats with Charlie, and he's actually on the Board Game Design Lab podcast today, if you want to check that out. He's a really, really smart designer, has some great advice for talking about digital game design and board game design, and I backed that this morning because I want to support Charlie's venture into the board game world. Chad says, did you upgrade your uplift desk with the available hammock for the occasional afternoon nap? I bet your cats would love it. Yeah, Chad's referring to this odd accessory. I didn't get it, Chad, for the uplift sit-stand desk, where the desk is so strong that you can actually attach a hammock that they sell under the desk, and you can hang out under that hammock. I think I have the desk size that's big enough to have the hammock, but I don't want to. I don't want to get in a hammock under my own desk. Chris says, would have been some games that you have purchased upgrades for? Yeah, Chris, that was asked recently, and I didn't have a great answer for it because I don't often buy upgrades for games, partially because my company makes some of the upgrades for games. Like I love metal coins, but we make viticulture coins. We have Charterstone coins. We have Scythe metal coins. So I have metal coins. We also make realistic resource tokens. So those are the two main areas where I probably would upgrade our games, and I already have a lot of tokens to do that with. Chris also says, how are Biddy and Walter? Thank you for asking, and they are doing great. I think you might have seen Walter on camera a few minutes ago. He is doing well, and Biddy is feisty as usual. Matt says, how am I enjoying this season of Survivor? Man, I'm loving it, Matt. This season of Survivor, the TV show, The American Survivor, is an all winners season. And it's, in my opinion, it's epic, it's intense, it's the best of the best competing against one another. And sometimes I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, who is this person? I don't remember them all that well. Are they really like on the same caliber of some of these other winners? But then I see their play and I'm reminded of their play, and some of them are even upping their game well beyond what they originally played, I think. And I'm just impressed by the caliber of play all around and how certain people are forced to adjust their strategies because people have watched them on TV. They know how they usually play, so they're having to adjust and pivot. I'm loving it. I don't watch the episodes live, so I won't watch it tonight. So don't spoil anything, but I probably will watch it at lunch tomorrow, and I can't wait to see what happens. Let me jump. I have more comments over here, but I'll jump back over to them in a second. Let me see if I have any other. I do have other topics. I also play videos that I did recently. One was about Glenmore Chronicles. That was my Friday video. And then I talked about Underwater Cities in yesterday's video. Two fantastic games. And then my Sunday sit down was about auction and bidding mechanisms. Or auction games with bidding mechanisms, because there are different styles of auction games. I was talking about games where you are actively bidding on certain things and seeing an escalation in pricing, opposed to like the Isle of Skye style of auction where you were setting a price and people are either buying it or not buying it. So that was a fun video to make if you're interested in auction games. And a video that I will be filming next week is about my favorite abstract games. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about your favorite abstract games. In case I have a growing list that I'm working on, but in case I've forgotten anything, feel free to mention your favorite abstract games in the comments here, and I might consider it for my list. Lisa said that she played Scythe for the first time at a convention, and she said she had a great time. I'm glad to hear that, Lisa. She also won My Little Scythe and Play and Win, and can't wait to teach her son. That sounds like a good convention weekend for you, Lisa. Scythe and you won My Little Scythe. That's awesome. Stefan says, do you ever wish you had named Scythe something else because people can't seem to pronounce it? It's my number one game of all time, and it drives me nuts when people say it wrong. You know, Stefan, I was just thinking about that today, not in terms of pronunciation, but in terms of how honestly happy I am with the Scythe name. I love that we came up with that name. I was thinking about it for reasons that I won't go into here, but I was thinking about it for a very specific reason in terms of naming games and whatnot. And I love the name. I know it's weird to pronounce, but I think the name captures the game perfectly. So I'm very happy with the name. I wouldn't change it for the world. All right, Isaac says he loves that shirt. Anything new from viticulture coming in the future? We do have, I have some designers that are working on some viticulture expansions. Maybe one expansion, maybe two, and they're kind of designing the initial portion of it, and then I will come in as either a co-designer or a developer to see where I can take it. No guarantees at this point. It's going to take a while, and I don't know exactly what will come of it, but we do have something in the works, and hopefully something will come of it. Amy has a game recommendation. She says, you mentioned that you enjoy Cryptid. The game Telepathy is another deduction game for 2 players only. It uses dry erase boards to help you keep track of the information you learn. It's an excellent couples game. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for the recommendation. I haven't heard of Telepathy, but I will check that out, Amy. Thank you for the recommendation. And I think I missed another recommendation above from Josh. Nakaluka. I don't know much about that, but I appreciate that recommendation as well. Ben says, have I seen the 3D Scythe map on the Scythe board game Facebook group? Have you ever thought about producing a premium product similar to this for any of your games? I think it's really cool. I have seen it on both the Scythe Facebook group and Board Game Geek, and it looks awesome. I actually should have looked a little bit closer to see how the units fit onto the board. That's been the reason that I haven't considered anything like that, or one of the reasons. The other reason being that it would be incredibly expensive to produce at scale. but like how the pieces stay on a mountain region without toppling over. I need to look at that a little bit closer to see how they did that. It probably isn't the type of component that we would produce for a game just due to the expense, but I think it's really cool that someone went out there and spent the time and energy to make it. Mo says you should make a travel game for one of our games. Have you thought about making your games smaller or travel versions? I've been thinking about travel games recently. I love the idea of games that travel easily, but they don't really fit into the Stonemaier Games philosophy, which is that our games need to have a component hook and kind of a component hook is the main part of it, a beautiful table presence. And travel games, while they can be beautiful, the whole point of it is that they don't take up much table space, that they don't have much of a table presence. So maybe someday, but it just isn't something that we've pursued based on our philosophy so far. Sean says, would I allow luxury series of my games, like Luxury, Monopoly, or Clue? Sean, recently I talked about kind of deluxe versions of games. I think luxury is a whole another level. But I don't know if I would go up to that level. Like we saw it a few years ago. I think there was a Small World, like super luxury version that came out in a big wooden box, very nice pieces, huge nice pieces. I'm sure it was incredibly expensive to produce. I wouldn't rule it out. I think it's possible, but I wonder if the number of people who could afford that type of thing compared to the amount of time and effort you'd have to go into making it and the level of quality control that you would need. Like if you're going to make a luxury product, it needs to be perfect on every level. I don't know. I don't know if our time and resources are best spent on that type of product, given the limited audience of it, and especially given that like people have spent hundreds of dollars on Scythe about making their version of Scythe as beautiful and nice as possible. Some of it products they bought from us, some products from other companies. And so to go back to those people are kind of the target audience for this type of product, to go back to them and say, hey, remember all that money that you spent on Scythe? Now there's an even nicer version of it that you could buy. I don't know. The closest I've come to doing that is with the metal mechs for Scythe. And even that, that took a lot of thought and calculation to do that in a way that would be fair to people that already have perfectly functional mechs and people who have even spent money painting their mechs. So I don't know. That's a great question, though. It's something for me to definitely think about in the future. Let me jump back over. I'm reading some comments over here, but no questions. I'll jump back in a second. Other games. So right now, I've been just things I've been working. I've been working on two games that I've been jumping back and forth between, which is my usual design process. I usually try to have two games in the works at different stages, and really, honestly, I have three games in the works, and kind of four. So I have three games in two that are in brainstorming. One is very early brainstorming. One is near first prototype brainstorming, or really second prototype. I've already play tested it a few times. And then another game that's further along, that is just a bigger game that I've been working on an ongoing basis. So that's been fun. But we also have a couple games that are entering production now, or not necessarily games, products that are entering production, which means that they are roughly between like 5 and 8 months out from their release dates. Production takes a long time. We have pre-production, we have to actually make the product and ship it and all that. So don't get too excited when I say that we have games entering production, but I am excited by it because it means that we've spent a lot of time and effort getting these to the point that they're ready for production, and now we're proceeding with that. So yeah, that's where we are right now with a few games and what I've been working on over the last week or so. Mahir says that Cerebria is a nice abstract game. I was asking for abstract game recommendations a minute ago, or what your favorite abstract games are, because I'll be posting a Sunday sit-down top 10 video about abstract games in the near future. Looks like James Hudson has joined us. James, thanks for dropping by. Phoebe says she has a very important question. Is cereal a soup? I can see the argument either way, Phoebe, but I will instinctively say not a soup. Just, that's my off-the-cuff answer, not a soup. Andrew says, hopefully this isn't annoying at this point, but wanted to check on your idea of a card game in the Scythe universe. I love Scythe and I love card games, so it would be a dream come true. I wanted to show support for the idea. Yeah, Andrew, I still am brainstorming an expandable game in the Scythe universe that is not Scythe. I don't know exactly what it will become at this point, but I will say that I am in the brainstorming process for it to see if maybe someday it comes to life. Yeah. I appreciate your curiosity and enthusiasm about it, though. Oh, George says that I started this chat 1 hour earlier today. George, this is daylight savings time, so it's now. I think I started at the right time. Yeah, I started at 10 a.m., which is the normal time for me to start, but it's 10 a.m. St. Louis time. So if you don't do daylight savings time, you're probably off by an hour than when I usually do this. Corlin said, "How is the coronavirus affecting production lately?" Yes, I actually posted a blog post about this on Monday. There were delays, but our factory Panda has reopened. I think they're still not at full capacity because they're waiting for some of their employees to return from the Wuhan province following the quarantine. I don't know how much longer that will go on, but Panda is back up and operational now, and everything kind of seems to be moving along. Everything was delayed by a month based on the factory closure, but everything seems to be moving along now. Sonia recommends Ikazu for abstract. I haven't heard of that one. Andrew says, What were my thoughts on Azul Summer Pavilion? I absolutely loved it. I really, really loved it. I'm going to do a video on that soon, but it was my number one game played at Geekway Mini. The things I love in particular about it are how flexible it is. Like, it's rare that you're kind of just backed into a corner that you don't want to be in. And I also really love the rewards that you get throughout the game. There are little completion rewards where you get extra tiles throughout the game as you play. So you're not just building towards end game points, you're building towards little rewards during the game itself. Really thought that was cool. Cody, thank you for posting that link about the coronavirus. I appreciate that. Lucas says, have I ever considered designing an escape room? Either one in a physical space or a take-home version similar to Exit Unlock? Yeah, that's a good question. I have not thought about designing a real-life one, but a tabletop version of an escape room game. There is a game I'm working on that is not an escape room game in the way that you might think about it, but there is an escape element to it, kind of, and there are definitely puzzles in it, like an escape room game. Yeah. I'm looking at my topics here. I've been, in terms of, this is a other gaming related topic, typically not the types of games that we talk about, but I will soon be having my fantasy baseball draft. I always look forward to that every year. I love, I've done fantasy baseball for like 20 years now with the same group of guys and girls, and we have our draft coming up. So I've been doing a little preparation for that. I used to spend hours on it. Now I spend like 20, 30 minutes on it, and I'm ready for the draft. I voted yesterday. I don't have the sticker on anymore, but I voted in the primary yesterday. Megan and I have been watching, we watched the movie Onward over the weekend and really enjoyed it. It's the latest Pixar film. And I didn't get this from the trailers. I didn't know this, but there's a lot of gaming references in it, specifically role-playing games, but also any game with like magic or spells. The movie references those styles of games quite a bit, which was a nice, pleasant surprise in the movie Onward. And we've also been watching Altered Carbon. That's been our serious nighttime show over the last couple days, and I am thoroughly confused by it, but it is kind of an intriguing world. It's based on a futuristic world where people, if you die, you can get a new body that might be very different than your original body. So you get to kind of plug in this disc that's kept in your neck. You take that disc out of the old body and it goes into the new body. And the show does a lot of interesting things with that concept of near immortality, but that bodies themselves are disposable. You don't just get the same body that you had before. Pretty interesting concept, but the plot so far is thoroughly confusing. I don't really know what's happening, but I'm enjoying the ride so far, especially the world-building elements of it. And one of the other shows that we debated watching, and I'm curious what you all think. If you think we're definitely going to finish Altered Carbon at this point now that we're a couple episodes in. But we are thinking about watching the show 6 Feet Under. some people recommended it on my blog, and I've heard good things about it. It's a little more daunting to get into because it's like 6 seasons to get into, but at least we know going into it that it is a completed show. We're not waiting for the conclusion. So if you have watched 6 Feet Under and you recommend it, let me know in the comments. Cody says, other than combat mechanisms, what are mechanisms you're not crazy about in game design? Yeah, Cody, I have a video about that. I'm trying to think of the title of it. It's like, it was a video I filmed almost a year ago now. Oh, gaming exceptions. Let me see if I can pull it up and post it in the comments here. So I'm going to search my channel for the word exceptions. And basically it is it's a video about mechanisms that I typically don't enjoy, but games in which I do enjoy those mechanisms. Like I think there's player elimination. Yeah, I have it here. I'll post it in the comments. Player elimination. There's, let me see if I list the games. Nope, I didn't do it. Oh, apparently there's I'm looking at the comments here. There's an interesting cat related thing that happens in the video. There's Grim Forest. Actually, James Hudson's here. I mentioned Grim Forest because of the take that element in it. But Grim Forest is an example of take that I really enjoy. Area control comes up. Yeah, there's a number of different mechanisms here that I typically don't gravitate towards. Combat is one of them, but this video explains games where I actually do enjoy that mechanism. So I'll post that in the comments right now. Sean says, have I seen that conventions have been canceled, like by Southwest, E3? There's rumors that Geekway, BGGCon, and others will be canceled. If Geekway is on, will you still go? Definitely, yeah, I'll still go. If Geekway is hosting it and they so far have said that they are still going to be having it this year, I'll definitely be there. Yeah. Carol says, are we on season 1 or 2 of Altered Carbon? We just finished episode 3 of season 1, so we're still kind of getting into it. Doug says, have I ever gotten rid of a game from my collection, regretted it, and then reacquired it? If so, why did you regret getting rid of it in the first place? That is a fun question, Doug, and it has definitely happened. The main instance of when it's happened was I took a bunch of games to a family reunion at the beach a couple years ago. I wanted to share a bunch of games from my collection, and my thought going into it was I want to share these games with people that I care about and they're games that I love. And if I see someone who is really excited about one of these games at the family reunion, I will give them the game and be happy that they have it. And if I really want it, I can replace my copy. And a number of those games are games that I kind of wish I hadn't given away. I don't know if I've actually reacquired any of them because friends typically have those games. I know Codenames was among them. What else was among them? Oh, there was a classic game. Oh, Ticket to Ride, I believe. Yeah, Ticket to Ride, I think, was among them. And that's one that I don't often yearn to play Ticket to Ride, but it is kind of a nice game when I don't want to think all that hard, but just have fun with a game. I love Ticket to Ride. That was definitely in there. And a few other games. I'm looking at my collection now to see if I have restocked any of them. I can't see any right now where that is the case. But there were definitely a few other games in there that I really enjoyed and I gave away to family and I probably should restock at some point. But I do have friends who have access to them too. Do you have an example of that, Doug? Giorgio says, what's a big change that was made last minute to one of your now published games that totally affected either gameplay or theme? It's pretty rare that we'd make a last minute change because that indicates that we haven't really play tested it. There was actually one for Wingspan that we did make that was fairly last minute. And Elizabeth and I tested it and talked about it and realized that it didn't make a huge difference, but intuitively it did help, which is originally in Wingspan, you would take actions from left to right. But we realized at the last minute, or fairly late in the process, that the core action that you're gaining in the Wingspan is shown on the rightmost exposed space. or really the leftmost exposed space, but it's on the right of all the other bird cards that you've played. And so that's the first thing that you look at. And we were asking players to do that thing, but to put their player token on the left and move left to right. And so we reversed it very late in the process to say that, okay, you place your player token on that empty space, that first empty space, gain that benefit as you were doing before. You were always gaining the core benefit first, and then move the token right to left instead of left to right. Tony says that he had a Stonemaier game week. That's awesome, Tony. I like to hear that. He said he played Tapestry, played Wingspan with the European expansion. Well, that's just 2 games. Any other games in there, Tony? We have 9 games in print now. Dusty has joined us. Dusty from the Mill Show. Dusty, thanks for dropping by. Andrew says, in general, do you prefer sitting down with a smaller group for a strategy game or larger groups for more casual games? You know, it seems that more and more, it's been a while since I've played many larger group games with the people that attend my game groups. I think what we used to do is usually start the game night with a bigger large group game and then settle down for longer games and smaller groups. But now we kind of just go right into those larger games, and if things end up a little bit uneven, if we're waiting for people, we might play some filler games either before or after. But we typically jump right in with smaller groups. That's what we've been doing for quite some time now. Some people are recommending 6 Feet Under. I appreciate you chiming in about that. Suzanne says it has the best ending of any series. Yeah, I've heard good things about the finale, which is so far off. 6 seasons off from watching the finale, but it's good that a show ends well. That's encouraging. James says, with the success of Wingspan, do I see space in the industry for more outside-the-box themes? If they're done well, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. James says, I'm developing, this is James, not Jamie. James says, I'm developing a board game with a drag queen theme, as I think we have the opportunity to educate as well as have a good time with gaming. However, I'm conscious the theme might put people off. I think you're going into it with an excellent perspective there. And for any unique theme, I think there are going to be some people who love it and some people who don't. For the theme that you've mentioned here, I think it will be a somewhat select audience, but for that audience, they might be really, really excited about it. And you might bring in some people that wouldn't normally think about that theme. So yeah, I hope you have fun with the design process at the very least. Okay, Carol had a comment about Altered Carbon here. I'm just reading it. Andrew says, how are the point values assigned to birds of Wingspan? Elizabeth, the designer, has a massive spreadsheet that uses a lot of different elements to calculate the point values. A lot of it is just math, where it looks at the number of eggs on the bird, the habitats it can be played in, the food cost, the strength of the ability, all those sorts of things go into that calculation. And even the nest type. The wingspan itself even goes into it. So she has a complex formula that determines that point value. Obviously, formulas are great for like 95%. And then there's a 5% where you need some wiggle room. You need to calculate it. You need to play test a bunch. And yeah, so that's where some soft changes go into that. But most of it is part of a formula. Mitch says, what nonprofit organizations does Stonemaier Games support? How is Stonemaier Games present in the St. Louis community? Well, Mitch, you can look at this on our donations portion of our website. Every year we do a large charity auction where we don't choose the charities. Rather, I select 10 content creators in the board game industry, whether they're bloggers, podcasters, they have a YouTube channel about board games. I select around 10 of them. I think I did 12 this past year. And I select them because I want to share them with other people. They're often smaller channels that not many people have heard about. And I let them each select their own charity. And then we run a charity auction where we donate. The auction is for something really cool that Stonemaier Games makes. Last year it was for these custom Wingspan boxes where people got to choose the birds on the boxes. And we matched the winning bid for each of those auctions, and then we donate that total to each of the charities selected by those bloggers. It's a major charitable effort. I think we've given last year I think it was over $14,000 to those charities. We also recently did something that we normally don't do because we usually focus our charitable efforts on that one aspect. But we also recently contributed to around 10,000 Australian dollars to the wildfire relief efforts in Australia. Mitch says, how is Stonemaier Games present in the St. Louis community? We're here. I support Geekway to the West, a local convention here. But we're just here. Like I have many friends at different board game companies and whatnot. But that's a big question. If you can be more specific about that part of the question, or what your expectation is for a company to be present in a local community, let me know. But as you can tell, I work from home, so I could probably do this part of my job from anywhere. My main presence in the community is probably at Geekway to the West, a local convention. Actually, I do host Stonemaier Games Design Day, which is a design-specific convention, small convention run by us in September. That is at Pieces Board Game Cafe. So, one other little thing. Zach says, I ordered Charterstone and am excitedly waiting to receive it. Any tips to get the best experience from the game? Is there an ideal player count in your opinion? I designed it to work and be a lot of fun for 2 to 6 players. I think the key is to find people that know what they're getting into and are committed to playing through the 12 game campaign. And tips to get the best experience from the game. The main thing I'd recommend is to look at the FAQ, be aware of the FAQ, and it is now printed and included in the Charterstone box, so you don't have to look at our website for it. Lucas says, I've heard you mention blind playtesting. What makes a playtest blind? Lucas, a blind playtest is when I send digital files for a game to someone. They could be anywhere in the world, and I ask them to playtest it, to be a lead playtester within their group of friends or their gaming group. And so they have to print off the files from at home. They read the rules, they learn the rules on their own, and they playtest. The blind portion pretty much means that I am not there to answer questions. They are relying on the rules to play the game and then offer feedback based on a form that I send them. But the blind portion is the fact that I am not there to answer rules questions to kind of guide them through it. They're playtesting it blind without me there. It also helps with the unbiased nature of it. If you have the designer kind of looming over the table, sometimes people can respond more positively than they otherwise would. Whereas if the designer isn't there, they feel open to say whatever they want. So you get, I think, better unbiased feedback. Andrew says, which mech design inside is your favorite? His is between Polania and the Rusviets. I do love the Rusviet mech. The big sides on the front, it looks looming and scary and different than mechs that I've previously seen. So I'll probably say Rusviet. Jeremiah says, it's a bucket list item to play Mega Civilization. You in? I do want to play it someday. I don't know if I ever will, though. It's this weird thing where I want to play it someday, but it's such a huge time commitment for the same game, for one game. Given what I've learned about the most fun portion of the game, which is the trading, the real-time trading portion, I think I'd almost just rather play Trade on the Tigers, which is an excellent real-time trading game. So I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever actually set aside a full day to play a single game. Doug is the one that asked the question about games that I got rid of and then regretted and got it back. And he said that he got rid of a game called Punked that I haven't heard and Fuse, and then he reacquired it because he really wanted to have it back on his shelf. Mondo says I heard Stephen Bonacore, who runs Stronghold Games, talk about how overproduction is causing issues for board game retailers and how some publishers will be producing fewer games this year as a result. Any thoughts on that specifically as it relates to Stonemaier Games? Yeah, I've heard Stephen talk about this as well. I mean, this has been the Stonemaier Games strategy from very early on in the process, which is we only make 1 or 2 new games every year. In 2020, we'll probably only have 1 new game. So rather than use the strategy of, hey, we'll make 20 games and we hope that 2 of them do well, or we hope that all of them do well, but we expect that only a few of them will, we only make 1 or 2 games and we put everything into those games. So that's a strategy that we've used for a long time, and I'm excited to see other game publishers do the same thing. It is a strategy that we learned from Days of Wonder, who published Ticket to Ride. I wonder, I don't know if Stephen is also saying this, I haven't heard him say this, but the idea of companies making fewer copies of games as well, fewer units, not just fewer types of games, but fewer units. I suspect that will definitely happen this year. Part of it due to the 1 month delay in China, that where games just nothing was being made for a month unexpectedly due to the coronavirus. I think we probably haven't seen the end of the impact in China, and I think if we do see an economic downturn as related to the coronavirus, this isn't what you were asking, but related to the coronavirus, board games are not essential. I love them; they're a huge part of my life, but food is essential, shelter is essential. Healthcare, internet is essential. These are things that are largely essential in our lives now, and board games are not one of them. So I think if people need to give up something for a little while, it will be non-essential items like board games. So I think we'll see companies start to pull back. I will certainly be doing fewer reprints this year to tighten things a little bit and be prepared for people to buy fewer board games over the course of 2020. Steven says, have I ever thought about doing a top 10 style list for various player counts? Our game group right now is frustrated with how many 4-player games we want to play, but always have 5 or 6-player games, so those get unplayed. I haven't thought about that, but I like that idea. I know I think Tom Vassell at Dice Tower has his favorite games at each player count, whether it's on his channel or on his podcast. I'm trying to think of how I would approach that. I've definitely done it for 2-player games. It's tougher to do it beyond that. Like 3 and 4, there's so many games that play at 3 and 4. It would be tough to do that. I could do one for my favorite games that play at 5 or 6, or maybe just 6. I'll make a note of it. 5, 6-player games. Yeah. The good news there, Stephen, is you can always look at Stonemaier games. All of our games play at least 5 players, and most of them play 6 or even higher than 6. So you always have that option. Zach says, if we flipped over a sand timer for Codename Sand right now to count down the time until we were ready to tease us with some information on that game, approximately when would that timer run out? Very cleverly phrased question there, Zach. It would take at least 3 or 4 months to run out, which would be a giant sand timer. Lise says, am I interested in designing games for kids? Not specifically, no. I'm interested in designing games that kids can play, but that are still appealing to adults too. So I rarely target an age, a specific age when I'm designing a game. Connie says, did I see that Rado and Tom Vassell had in their list Wingspan as one of the 10 most important games of the decade? I didn't see that, no, but that's really cool that they both mentioned it there. Thank you for sharing that. Let me see if I have any other topics today. I'll finish up with questions, but today I talked about new monitor arms that I put on my monitor. I talked about Flotilla, Azul Summer Pavilion, Life Siphon, Underwater Cities, Charterstone, which we just started a new campaign, Glenmore. I did a video about auction and bidding mechanisms. Talked a little bit about the coronavirus today. What was the blog topic I did recently? Oh, pre-launch stretch goals. That was the other topic that I talked about last week, about companies that are maybe having stretch goals even before they start their Kickstarter campaign. I talk a lot about that. I have a long, somewhat comprehensive post about that topic on Thursday. I asked for recommendations of your favorite abstract games. I'm excited about Fantasy Baseball, and I talked about how I voted, Altered Carbon, and Onward. So I'll finish up with any remaining questions that you all have here. Giorgio says, game boxes almost always mention player counts, but comparing them to Board Game Geek ratings, they are rarely accurate. Rarely are games as fun with X as they are with Y, although the box states that both are eligible. What's a good solution to such a problem? I think part of it is that game companies just need to be honest about it. Like, I think typically we know if a game doesn't work as well at a certain player count as it does other player counts. For example, for Between Two Cities, we acknowledge going into it that it is a game designed for 3+ players, but we have a 2-player variant in the box. And so, right on the box of Between Two Cities, we say on the box that it is a 3 to 7 player game with variants and modes for 1 to 2 players. So I think that's like a very honest way of indicating to people that that the game was designed for certain player counts, but it also functions due to what we've done in the game for these other player counts as well. Obviously, also though, sometimes people's opinions differ with the opinions of a publisher. So sometimes a publisher, like I'm sure there's a Stonemaier game out there where I think it works beautifully at 5 players, and other people don't, and I completely respect that. Euphoria might be actually an example of this, where Euphoria, I think, is the rare Euro-style game that actually works better the more players you have. It's a little faster, there's a little bit more interaction with 4, 5, 6 players. But it does, I designed it, largely playtesting it, locally at least, with my business partner, Alan. And so I know it works well, and I have fun with it at 2 to 3 players. But when the game came out, the perception of it was that it didn't work as well with those lower player counts, and so we addressed it in an expansion. In the Ignorance is Bliss expansion, we do address that a bit, but it is one of those things where I fully believe the game works well at 2 to 3 players, and some people disagree. So you're always going to see that subjective disconnect, I think. Chad says, I know you had planned for a trip to Alaska, but with the coronavirus, is that still your plan? It is currently still my plan, or our plan, yes. Yeah, but we'll see about that. I am open to changing it if it is the best thing for me and the people around me and humanity in general. Jacobo says, I just played Agricola and Caverna for the first time, and I was overwhelmed by the number of options available. On the other side, it was cool to have so many paths to victory and options. From a design perspective, how can a designer give many paths to victory without overwhelming the players? Do you have some insight? I actually think those games do it pretty well. Like in Agricola, one of the things that does so well is that different actions accumulate resources as they are, if they aren't chosen in the previous round. So certain actions become more appealing than others. So even though you have all these options available, there are some that probably jump out, starting with the second round, the third round, as they start to accumulate these resources. Another thing that Agricola does particularly well with that is that it doesn't start out with all of the action spaces available. Rather, you reveal them round after round as the game proceeds. So you start off with a select number of actions, and that expands over the course of the game. I think Lords of Waterdeep also does this really well. You start off with a few core actions, and then room for all these buildings around the edges of the board. But you don't start off with those buildings right away. You build them as you play and add new action spaces to the board. And also, as you're adding those action spaces, you can't just add 10 of them in the first round. You're adding them pretty much one at a time, one per round, because of the limited space on the building action space itself. So I think those are some ways to do it, to start off any session of a game with limited actions and let those actions grow over the course of the game. That's one way to do it. I could list other examples here, but I think that's one to take into consideration. Lucas says, what are my tips from working from home? I recently left the classroom to run my own business and find it hard to be productive from home. I haven't had that problem with productivity. The biggest problem I've run into it is finding a delineation between basically being able to cut off business time so that I have some much needed personal time for myself. So if you're having the opposite problem, it might be more of a little bit of a discipline issue, being able to focus on what you're doing. I would recommend having a devoted space where all you do in that space is work. That space isn't used for anything else, and that everyone in your household respects that space. When you're working, when you're in that space, that you are working, and that is your space. And when you're not, you're not. You're free to talk with other members of your household. If I think of anything else, I'll let you know before the end of this video chat. Kent says, speaking of real-time trading, have I played Sidereal Confluence? Yes, I played it once. I had a great time with it. I think I prefer Trade on the Tigris for that genre of game, but I still really like Sidereal Confluence. Andrew says, have I played Food Chain Magnet? I played it once. I didn't. I thought it was fine, but I wasn't excited to return to it. Yeah. Cody says, can I speak to the differences between game designing and game publishing? Well, so there's a huge difference there. Game designing is just bringing a game to life, having an idea and inspiration, prototyping, playtesting, and having a functional game. Game publishing is everything that follows that, which is the marketing, the operations, the logistics, the customer service, the art direction, the actually spending money on all these things, the legal side, the accounting side. So if you look at my blog, the Snow Games blog, you'll see a section on how to design a tabletop game. And it has like 20 articles in it. It's a fairly involved process, but I even distilled it down to 10 steps on a recent video. But then if you look at my Kickstarter lessons, which is basically how to run a business, whether or not it's on Kickstarter, there are over 270 of them. So like that's like everything under the iceberg. The game design is the tip of the iceberg, and everything else is under that iceberg, under the surface. Cody says, what would you advise for someone aspiring to work for themselves in an entrepreneurial spirit if choosing between designing and publishing? I think the key is, do you want to be a game designer or do you want to run a business? And sometimes you might say yes to both of those. Sometimes you might genuinely enjoy both of those. I am one of those people. I love running a business. I love all the puzzle of logistics and operations and customer service, all that stuff of communications, marketing, project management. That's a huge part of it. But I also enjoy designing games, so I do both of them. But I think oftentimes people like one or the other, and that's fine. It means that if you just want to be a game designer, you can submit your game to publishers, or you can find a partner. If you really do want to start a business, but you want to focus on the game design, you could find someone else, a friend, someone in the industry who really enjoys that business side, and you can partner with them and start a company. But I think it's a great question to be asking yourself, Cody. Dusty says, if someone made a Walter and Biddy cartoon, those are my two cats, what two celebrities are voicing the boys and why? You know, I rarely do voices for my cats. I have a friend who always does voices for his cats and dogs. I'm curious if you do that, Dusty, for your cat or I think you have one or two dogs. I can't remember. Or maybe no dogs. I know you have a cat from your videos. What celebrities would voice Walter and Biddy? Walter's voice would be kind of slower and low. No, it would be high pitch and slower. Biddy would be like hyper intelligent, hyper alert, and a little whiny. I'm not coming up with any celebrities off the top of my head, but I think that's a fun question. If anyone has any recommendations, let me know in the comments here. Carol says, how does knowing the changes that will happen in Charterstone affect your gameplay? You know, that part, while I love the uncertainty, the element of discovery in Charterstone, I still find the game a lot of fun, even though I know what's going to happen. I think it helps that I haven't played in a while, though, so that I've forgotten certain beats in the game. I'm not completely forgotten, but I've tried not to think about them enough that I am not planning ahead for certain things. And during the first two games, there were a few things that I was aware of that were coming, and I would just try to tell myself, like, don't think about them. Don't strategize around them. Don't use this to your advantage. I don't know how to answer, Carol. It hasn't really impacted my play so far. I enjoy watching the other players go through that discovery element. And for me, I'm kind of just there to have a good time strategically and also to help facilitate their fun. We're getting to the end of the questions here. It looks like Jakub Rozalski joined us today. Happy birthday to Jakub. Today is his birthday. Any other questions? Zach says, what is the best meal that I ever had at a convention? I've had some good meals at Gen Con. In Indianapolis, because we treated volunteers to some rather big meals, and Panda has treated us to some nice meals, our manufacturer. There was one at a steakhouse that was very good. There was a Brazilian steakhouse, and then another, I think, St. Elmo's, where I actually really liked their spicy shrimp cocktail. Really, really good spicy shrimp cocktail there. That might have been the best meal. Although we also had some really good pizza one year at a little off-the-wall place, and a really good Mexican. I've had some great meals at Gen Con, really. Yeah. All right, it looks like we are at the end of today's chat. Thank you all for joining me and asking these questions and participating. If you do have any questions that come to mind after I cut this off, feel free to jump over to YouTube in about 10-15 minutes and post them there. That's where I'll get alerts and I'll answer questions in the future. So I will see you next Wednesday. Have a great day and take care. Bye.